What if a single, ordinary act of courage changed the course of two lives forever? Jack Carter was just a small-town single dad doing his best to hold things together, raising his daughter, fixing leaky pipes, and living day by day. But one snowy morning, when flames lit up the sky, he rushed into a burning building and carried out a woman he didn't recognize. What he didn't know? She was one of the most famous chefs in the country. What she didn't expect? To find healing. Not in a hospital, but in a humble kitchen. And in the quiet kindness of a man who had no idea who she was. This is a story about second chances, unlikely love, and how a single moment can lead you exactly where you're meant to be. And hey, if stories about love, hope, and the power of kindness speak to your heart, consider subscribing to the channel. We share tales that warm the soul and leave you believing in the goodness of people. Now, let me tell you the story of a struggling single dad saves a woman from a burning building, discovers she's a celebrity chef. The alarm buzzed at 5:45 a.m., sharp and unmerciful. Jack Carter groaned, rolled over, and slammed his hand onto the snooze button. For a moment he lay still, listening to the silence of the old house, until he heard the faint thud of little footsteps padding across the hallway. "Daddy," came the sleepy voice of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. "I'm up, sweetheart," he called back, already swinging his legs over the side of the bed. Another day, Jack thought. Another 24 hours of duct tape, dripping faucets, busted, water heaters, and just barely making ends meet. He rubbed his temples and let out a breath before forcing a smile onto his face, the kind Lily wouldn't question. He'd learned long ago that a good father didn't let the weight of the world show, even when it felt like it might crush him. Downstairs, the kitchen buzzed to life. The old coffee pot gurgled like it was having an asthma attack. Jack cracked eggs with one hand while flipping pancakes with the other, the radio playing soft country in the background. A picture of Lily, framed in popsicle sticks and glitter, stood proudly on the windowsill, grinning at him with 2 missing front teeth. Lily tiptoed in, hugging her favorite stuffed bunny, Mr. Flopsy, and climbed into the chair at the tiny kitchen. "And table, pancakes again?" she asked, eyes lighting up. "Of course, it's Thursday, isn't it?" Jack grinned, sliding a golden brown stack onto her plate. "With a little cinnamon, just how you like it." "You're the best cook ever," she said between bites, syrup clinging to her chin. Jack chuckled. "Don't let Gordon Ramsay hear you say that." Lily scrunched her nose. "Who's Gordon Ramsay?" "Just some guy who yells at people for a burning toast." She giggled. That sound, pure, unfiltered joy, was the reason Jack got out of bed every morning. He'd lost so much when his wife, Emily, passed away 3 years ago. But Lily, she was what kept him going, what made the long hours, the exhaustion, and the loneliness bearable. By 7:10, they were out the door. The cold December air bittered. Their faces, the ground crunchy with frost. Jack's old pickup coughed reluctantly to life, the heater sputtering like it might give out at any moment. They drove through their sleepy Oregon town, past the closed-down movie theater and the diner that never quite reopened after the pandemic. He pulled up in front of the school, turned to Lily, and kissed the top of her head. "Be brave. Be kind," he said, his daily ritual. "And be a light," she finished, her tiny fingers flashing him the peace sign before hopping out. He watched her disappear into the building, then drove off toward his first job of the day, Mrs. Talbot's leaking sink. But as he passed the corner of Maple and 3rd, he spotted something strange in his rear-view mirror. Smoke. Thick, black, curling smoke, rising from the 3rd floor of a nearby apartment building. Jack slammed the brakes. The truck jolted to a stop. For a split second he hesitated. It wasn't his problem. He had a job to get to, bills to pay, Lily to pick up by 3. He wasn't a firefighter, he wasn't a hero, but then he heard it. A scream, faint, muffled, but unmistakably human. Jack jumped from the truck. His boots crunched across the gravel as he sprinted toward the entrance. A few tenants had already made it out, gathering in huddled clumps on the sidewalk, their breath puffing in the cold. "There's someone still inside!" A young woman shouted, pointing toward the upper floor. "Third floor, back left!" Flames were already licking out of one window. The building groaned with heat. Jack didn't think. He didn't calculate. He just moved. Inside, the smoke was instant and suffocating. He pulled his jacket over his mouth, squinting through the thick grey haze. The stairwell was hot, but still intact. He climbed 2 steps at a time, each one threatening to collapse beneath him. When he reached the 3rd floor, he could barely see. The hallway was a tunnel of flickering shadows and oppressive heat. He shouted, "Hello? Anybody there?" No answer. He moved toward the back left apartment, kicked the door hard. It gave on the 3rd try. The room was a fog of smoke and chaos, half-packed suitcases, spilled coffee mugs, open windows that sucked in more smoke than air. And then, through the haze, he saw her. A woman, curled on the floor beside the bed, coughing weakly, one arm shielding her face. Jack didn't stop to process who she was. He grabbed her gently but firmly, lifting her to her feet. "We've got to go," he said, coughing hard. "Lean on me. Can you walk?" She nodded, barely. Together, they stumbled back through the inferno. The floor creaked under their weight. The ceiling groaned above. Somewhere behind them, something exploded, glass or maybe a pipe. Jack tightened his grip. The stairs were harder on the way down. He felt the woman falter, her strength slipping. Jack pulled her arm around his neck, half dragging her the rest of the way. They burst out the front door just as a 2nd-story window shattered behind them, flames roaring louder than any applause Jack had ever heard. Outside, paramedics rushed forward. Jack lowered the woman carefully to the ground before collapsing. Onto the curb, gasping for breath, his lungs burned, his shirt was singed, his hands shook, but she was alive and safe, and as the paramedics gathered around her, one of them suddenly did a double take. "Oh my God," she whispered, eyes widening. "That's Claire Laveau." Jack blinked. "Who?" The paramedic stared at him like he'd just said he didn't know who Elvis was. She's Claire Laveau, the celebrity chef. You saved Claire Laveau." Jack looked at the woman, who was now conscious, her eyes locked on his. Claire Laveau looked nothing like she did on the magazine covers he'd seen at grocery store checkouts. Her face was soot-smudged, her hair wild, and her designer coat scorched. Beyond recognition, but her expression in that moment was clear, awe and gratitude, and something else Jack couldn't quite name. The smell of smoke still clung to Jack's flannel shirt, long after the fire trucks had arrived, and the last embers had died down. He sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, a foil blanket wrapped awkwardly around his shoulders, his fingers red, and raw from heat and adrenaline. Paramedics moved around him like bees in a hive, efficient and unsentimental. Jack didn't mind. He wasn't looking for praise or attention. He just wanted to know the woman he'd carried out of the fire was going to be okay. "Hey," a paramedic said, crouching beside him. "We checked you over, nothing major. Just some minor smoke, inhalation and a few burns." "Lucky," Jack nodded. "What about her, the woman I brought out?" The paramedic hesitated for a second before glancing over his shoulder. Jack followed his gaze and saw her. The woman, Claire Laveau, propped up on a gurney with an oxygen mask over her face. Her eyes, though glassy with exhaustion, were open and alert. She was speaking softly to the EMT beside her, her voice muffled. "By the mask, she's stable," the paramedic said. "You got her out just in time. Another minute and, well," Jack swallowed hard. The reality of what could have happened hit him with a delayed punch. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling now, not from fear, but from the sheer release of tension. He'd acted on instinct. He hadn't paused to think, hadn't planned a thing, just went in, like a fool. Or maybe, like a father who knew what it meant to lose someone. A hand gently touched his arm. Jack looked up. It was her. Claire Laveau had pulled the oxygen mask off, her eyes focused entirely on him. Up close, even through the soot and disheveled hair, there was something striking about her. Not just beauty, though she was beautiful, but presence. She looked like someone who wasn't used to being ignored. Someone who had always held the room. "Thank you," she said, her voice raspier than he expected, but firm. Jack blinked. "You should be resting." "I will," she said, "but I needed to see you, to say it myself." Her fingers curled gently around the edge of the blanket draped over his shoulders. "You saved my life." Jack shifted, uncomfortable. He wasn't good at being the center of attention, especially not when that attention came from someone as polished, as famous as whatever she was. "I just did what anyone would have done." She arched an eyebrow, half amused, half incredulous. "You think anyone would have run into a burning building for a total stranger?" He shrugged. "There was screaming. You needed help." "That simple?" Jack met her eyes. "Yeah, that's simple." There was a beat of silence between them. Just long enough to settle. Then Claire coughed, wincing, and the attending EMT gently guided her back onto the gurney. "I'll check in on you," she said, her voice quieter now. "If that's okay." Jack gave a half smile. "I'm not hard to find. Small town." And then she was wheeled away, flashing one last grateful look over her shoulder. By the time Jack picked up Lily from school, he'd changed into clean clothes and scrubbed the smoke from his skin. But the scent still lingered faintly in his new hair, like a shadow that refused to let go. "Daddy!" Lily ran up to him, flinging her arms around his waist. "Why are you late?" He crouched down to her level. "There was a fire. I helped someone get out." Her eyes widened. "Like a superhero," Jack laughed, "more like a very sweaty plumber." She giggled, then paused. "Did anyone get hurt?" "No, everyone's okay." It was a small lie. The truth was, Claire could have died, she almost did, and if he had hesitated for even a moment. Jack shook off the thought. What mattered was that she was alive. That night, while Lily slept, curled up with Mr. Flopsy, and the hum of the old space heater filled the room, Jack sat at the kitchen table with a cold beer and the local news playing low on the television. The anchor's voice, usually flat and unremarkable, suddenly sparked to life. Celebrity chef Claire Laveau narrowly escaped a deadly apartment fire this morning in Pine Hill, Oregon, the reporter announced. Sources say a local resident pulled her to safety just minutes before the flames consumed the third floor. Jack sat up straighter. A photo of Claire, radiant, smiling in a gleaming white chef's jacket, filled the screen. The reporter continued. Claire Laveau, known for her Emmy-winning cooking show Claire's Table and her Michelin-starred restaurant Eclat, has been out of the public eye for several weeks. It's unclear why she was staying in Pine Hill, but authorities confirm she was rescued by a man identified as Jack Carter, a local single father and plumber. Jack dropped his head into his hands. Well, so much for anonymity. The next morning, his phone buzzed with messages from people he hadn't heard from in years, old classmates, customers, even the mayor's assistant. But the one message that caught his eye was from a number he didn't recognize. "Hi, Jack, it's Claire. I wanted to ask if I could thank you properly. Lunch? My treat?" He stared at the message for a long time. He didn't know what kind of woman Claire Laveau really was. The version on TV, poised, glamorous, untouchable, was a world away from the soot-covered woman he'd carried through smoke and fire, but there was something about her, something more real than her reputation. Maybe it was in the way she'd looked at him, like he was someone who mattered, like he wasn't just a name in a headline. Jack typed back, then paused. He deleted the message, then retyped, "Sure, but only if I get to cook something too," and hit send. Claire Laveau awoke to the antiseptic smell of a hospital room and the low hum of machines. For a long moment she didn't know where she was. Her body ached in unfamiliar places, her throat was raw, and her lungs burned with every breath. Then it came back to her, the smoke, the heat, the panic, and the man, tall, strong, with soot-smudged cheeks and a voice like gravel and safety. He'd carried her out like she weighed nothing, his arms steady, even as the world burned around them. She blinked hard, focusing on the ceiling tiles above her as if they might ground her. A nurse entered, her scrubs the color of a summer sky, and her voice gentle. "You're lucky," the nurse said, checking her IV. "They said another 60 seconds, and you might not have made it." Claire managed a weak smile. "I've had close calls in the kitchen before, but never quite like that." The nurse chuckled, clearly recognizing her now. "Claire Laveau, right? My mom used to binge-watch your show. Said you were the reason. She learned to make duck confit." Claire sat up slightly, wincing. "Guilty as charged." The nurse's voice softened. "Do you want me to call someone? Family? Friends?" Claire hesitated. "No, I'm good." And she was, in a way. Her life was a whirlwind of producers, managers and assistants, people who orbited her like moons, but rarely saw the real Claire. She'd come to this small town to disappear for a while. No cameras, no autographs, no obligations. Just quiet. And maybe, just maybe, to remember who she was without the fame. But the universe apparently had other plans. "Someone saved you," the nurse added after a beat. "Jack Carter, single dad, plumber, local guy. He's kind of a big deal, right?" "Now!" Claire's lips curved upward. "Jack Carter." She didn't know what she expected, maybe a burly firefighter or someone used to adrenaline, but Jack had felt different, calm, grounded, like he wasn't trying to impress anyone, like her being Claire Laveau didn't matter at all. She liked that more than she should have. By the time she was discharged, 2 days had passed. The media had begun to circle like vultures, and despite her best efforts to keep her location quiet, the headlines had gone viral. Claire Laveau rescued from fire by hometown hero, celebrity chef saved in dramatic blaze. But who is the mystery man? Claire cringed at every headline. She didn't want this kind of attention. Not now, not when she was just starting to feel human again. So instead of fleeing back to LA or hiding in some hotel suite, she borrowed a friend's car and followed. The only instinct that made sense. She went to find Jack. Jack Carter was elbow-deep in a water heater when Claire knocked on the open garage door of his workshop. He didn't see her at first, too busy cursing quietly at a rusted bolt. But then Lily, standing nearby with a juice box in one hand and a notebook in the other, looked up. "You're the lady from the fire," Lily said, eyes wide. "The cooking lady," Claire smiled, lowering herself to Lily's level. "And you must be Lily." Lily grinned. "How'd you know?" "I read your note," Claire said, holding up the folded letter she'd found tucked inside her hospital bag. Lily's careful crayon handwriting, thanking her for making her dad laugh again. Jack finally turned, wiping his hands on a rag. When he saw Claire, something unreadable flickered across his face. "You shouldn't be out and about," he said. "Doctor sign off on this field trip?" "I needed fresh air," she replied lightly, "and to say thank you again, in person." "You already did." Claire walked further into the shop. "Well, I'm persistent. Occupational hazard." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Most people who show up here need a water line replaced, not closure." "I'm not most people," she said, and there was no arrogance in it, just quiet truth. He nodded slowly. "I figured that out when I saw your face. On the news, next to a duck à l'orange." Claire laughed, a real laugh, surprised and delighted. "They used that photo." "That was from Bon Appetit in 2018. I looked like I slept in a soufflé." Jack smiled, just slightly. "You looked like someone who could teach a guy like me to cook better than instant mac and cheese." "You sell yourself short." "That's cinnamon. In your pancakes?" "Inspired," he blinked. "You tasted those? Hospital food doesn't exactly sing, but your breakfast leftovers in Lily's lunchbox. Best thing I'd had in 2 days." He was clearly flustered now, and Claire found herself enjoying it more than she should. Here was a man who'd walked into a burning building without blinking, and he was blushing over pancakes. "You want something?" he asked finally, crossing his arms. Not hostile, just guarded. Claire took a breath. "A meal. With you and Lily. My treat. Not because of the fire, because I'd like to know the man behind the cinnamon." Jack studied her for a long moment, and she let him. This wasn't a game. She wasn't looking for publicity. She was looking for something real, something she hadn't had in a very long time. Finally, Jack sighed. "One condition." Claire tilted her head. "Name it." "You let me cook the main course," she grinned. "Deal." Later that evening, as she drove back toward her rental cottage outside town, Claire turned off the radio and cracked the window. The winter air rushed in, cold and sharp, clearing the remnants of smoke from her lungs. She thought about Jack, his quiet strength, his dry humor, the way he looked at Lily like she was the entire universe. Claire had known a lot of men, talented, charming, brilliant men, but none had made her feel steady. She didn't know what came next, but she knew this. In that smoke-filled moment, Jack Carter had done more than save her life. He'd pulled her out of the fire and into something new, something she hadn't realized she'd been starving for, something that maybe tasted a little like cinnamon pancakes and second chances. Jack Carter wasn't the kind of man who got nervous before dinner. He'd changed diapers in the back of a truck, fixed plumbing at 2 in the morning during an ice storm, and once wrestled a raccoon out of his crawl space with nothing but a broom and an old army jacket. But this, cooking for a celebrity chef in his own kitchen. Yeah, this made his palms sweat. He stared down at the worn wooden cutting board, a chicken breast poised beneath his knife. He'd made this dish a dozen times, pan-seared with garlic, lemon, and rosemary, paired with roasted potatoes and green beans. Simple, humble. It had never failed him before, but Claire Laveau wasn't his usual dinner guest. He glanced across the room, where Claire stood barefoot, flipping through one of his cookbooks. Not one of the fancy kind, but the tattered, dog-eared kind you only find at flea markets or inherited from grandmothers. She seemed entirely at ease in his modest kitchen, as if stainless steel appliances and Michelin stars had no bearing here. "You actually use this?" she asked, holding up a faded, spiral-bound copy of the Oregon Church Ladies' Cookbook, 1978 edition. "Every week," Jack replied, seasoning the chicken. "Page 72, meatloaf that'll make you cry." Claire laughed. "I've spent half my life designing dishes with foie gras and truffle oil, and this says to mix ketchup and brown sugar and call it a glaze." "It is a glaze," he said, "and a good one." She set the book down, still smiling. "You're not what I expected." He paused. "Because I'm a plumber." "No," she said softly. "Because you didn't know who I was." Jack turned toward her, drying his hands on a dish towel. "Would it have changed anything if I'd known?" Claire tilted her head, considering. "It might have changed how you looked at me. Most people, they come with expectations, questions, assumptions." "I don't own a TV," Jack said with a shrug, "and my daughter thinks celebrity chef just means you cook better than I do." "She's not wrong," Claire teased, then softened. "But no, you didn't treat me like anything other than someone who needed help." "It was refreshing." Jack met her gaze. "Everyone's just a person, Claire. Fame doesn't make someone more valuable. It just makes people think they should be." She looked at him for a long time, and something in her expression shifted. Something unguarded, almost wistful. Then Lily came barreling into the room, breathless with excitement. "Dad, the green beans are dancing." Claire blinked. "They're what now?" "In the pan," Lily pointed. "He does this thing where they jump, like magic," Jack chuckled. "It's just butter and heat, kiddo, not Hogwarts." Claire leaned down. "Can I watch the magic too?" Lily nodded solemnly and took her hand, pulling her toward the stove. "For The next half hour, the kitchen transformed into something warmer than even Jack was used to. Claire chopped herbs while Lily set the table, placing napkins with exaggerated care. Jack plated everything, letting Claire sprinkle the final touch of parsley over the chicken, like she was crowning it. When they sat down to eat, the room fell into a hush, the kind that comes before something sacred. Claire took her first bite and closed her eyes. "Jack, this is perfect." He tried not to look smug. "It's just dinner." "No," she said, looking around at the mismatched plates, the flickering candle Lily had insisted on, and the small town quiet humming through the windows. "It's something I haven't had in a very long time." After Lily went to bed, tucked in with her bunny, and a whispered request that Claire come back soon, Jack and Claire stood outside on the porch, mugs of chamomile tea warming their hands. The winter sky above was cloudless, stars scattered like diamonds across velvet. The scent of pine and wood smoke lingered in the air. "So," Claire said softly, "how does a man like you end up living like this?" Jack sipped his tea. "What, you mean fixing toilets and raising a kid in a fixer-upper?" "I mean," she said gently, "someone who clearly loves cooking, who has this quiet wisdom and depth. Why not more? Why not restaurants or something bigger?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he answered without looking at her. "I had bigger once, before Lily, before Emily passed." Claire waited, not pushing. "She was pregnant when I got the job offer in Seattle. High-end restaurant wanted me as sous chef, big deal for a guy with my background, but Emily had complications, bed rest, emergency appointments. I turned the job down, took over my dad's plumbing business instead. It paid better, had insurance." Claire's heart tugged. "We lost her," he continued, voice low. "Lily was only a few weeks old, so I stayed for her, for the house, for something that felt solid." She put her mug down. "That wasn't giving up, Jack. That was choosing love." He looked at her then, and for the first time she saw something unspoken flicker in his eyes. Grief, yes, but also resilience. Quiet strength, the kind that doesn't demand attention but earns respect. "Don't you miss it?" she asked. "Every day. But I wouldn't trade 1 minute with Lily to get it back." Claire nodded slowly. "I've had all the success in the world, but some nights I come home to silence so loud it drowns me." They stood like that for a while. Two people from opposite worlds, suddenly closer than geography or circumstance. "Should allow," Claire turned to him. "Would you teach me?" Jack raised a brow. "To plumb?" She laughed. "No, to cook like you. Without cameras or scripts, just real food, real moments." He looked down, then back at her. "I think," he said, "you already know how. You just forgot why you started." Later that night, after she'd gone and the dishes had been washed, Jack stood alone in the kitchen, the smell of rosemary still lingering in the air. He looked at the chair where Claire had sat, the plate she'd cleaned, the napkin she'd folded with surprising neatness. She wasn't what he expected, and maybe, just maybe, neither was he. Claire returned the next evening, dressed in jeans and a thick cream sweater, her hair tucked under a knitted beanie that looked more farmer's market than Food Network. She brought wine, an Oregon Pinot Noir with a handwritten label, and a fresh loaf of sourdough wrapped in parchment paper. Jack opened the door with a raised eyebrow. "Bread and wine? You trying to impress the plumber?" Claire grinned. "That depends. Are you the kind of plumber who judges a crust? I'm the kind who can smell garlic 3 blocks away and knows when someone's hiding a baguette in their tote." She laughed as he let her in, the warmth of the house chasing away the chill in her bones. The kitchen already smelled like rosemary and butter. Lily sat at the table with a book and a bowl of carrot sticks, her bare feet swinging above the floor. "Hi." "Claire," she chirped, "Daddy said you're helping with dinner." Claire leaned down, smiling. "Only if I'm allowed to be the sous chef." Lily looked skeptical. "That means you chop stuff, right?" "That's the idea." "Okay. But Dad's very picky about the way onions are diced." Jack called from the stove. "She's not wrong." Claire shot him a look. "You run a tight ship. It's the only way to keep this crew in line." They cooked together as if they'd done it for years. Claire chopped with precision, but let Jack take the lead. He showed her how he seared pork tenderloin with a cast-iron pan seasoned by generations. She taught him a trick to soften kale with lemon juice and salt. Their movements became rhythm, a quiet choreography built on instinct and curiosity. They talked, but not about fame or tragedy. They talked about food. Jack confessed he used to dream of opening a food truck called Carter's Comfort, serving hearty meals with funny names like Plumber's Mac and Pipeburst Chili. Claire in turn admitted that her favorite meal wasn't a $200 tasting menu, but her grandmother's chicken noodle soup, served with club crackers and eaten on the back porch during thunderstorms. "Funny, isn't it?" Claire said, washing herbs at the sink. "People think chefs only eat caviar and duck confit, but the meals we remember, they're simple, real." Jack nodded. "I think it's because those meals came with something else. Company, love." She glanced at him, her hands still under the water. "Exactly." They ate dinner in the living room that night, sitting on the rug with the coffee table between them. Jack lit 2 candles that Lily had made at summer camp, one shaped like a heart, the other like a frog. Claire poured wine for the grown-ups and apple juice for Lily into mason jars. They laughed as they ate, sharing stories about botched recipes and culinary disasters. Lily declared that Claire's kale was less gross than expected, which Claire took as a high compliment. Halfway through the meal, Lily looked at Claire thoughtfully. "Do you have kids?" The question hung in the air like a held breath. Claire set her glass down gently. "No, I don't." "Why not?" Jack shot his daughter a warning glance, but Claire waved it off, smiling gently. "I guess I got busy with work." And time passed, and I never really stopped to think about what I was missing. Lily nodded solemnly, then leaned toward her. "You can borrow my dad sometimes. He's really good at hugs and pancakes." Claire's throat tightened. "That's very generous of you." After Lily went to bed, Claire helped Jack tidy up. The dishwasher chugged quietly as they stood at the sink, shoulders nearly touching. "You don't talk much about your world," Jack said after a moment. Claire tilted her head. "What do you want to know?" he shrugged. "Is it as glamorous as it looks?" "No," she said simply. "It's exhausting, rewarding, sure, but also lonely. You're constantly on. Your smile isn't always yours. Your time isn't your own." Jack handed her a dish to dry. "So why do it?" she considered. "Because food has power. It comforts. It connects. I wanted to remind people of that, but somewhere along the way, I forgot." Jack looked at her then. Not the way a fan might look at a celebrity, but the way a man might look at a woman who just said something that made him see her differently. "You remembered tonight," he said quietly. She smiled, soft and sincere. "Because someone reminded me." The next day, Claire drove out of town toward a quiet stretch of farmland, where she'd been staying in a rental cabin hidden among tall pines. She needed the solitude. It helped her breathe. But this time, as she walked through the door, something felt different. She wasn't alone in the same way. There was a warmth clinging to her, residual maybe, but real. A warmth that came from shared laughter, good food, and the feeling of being seen, not for who she was on television, but for who she was in the quiet. That night, she wrote, not a menu, not a press release, but a letter to herself. "You forgot the taste of joy, Claire, but you just had it again. You found it in a worn kitchen with scratched pots and mismatched plates. In the way Lily offered you her dad like a gift. In the way Jack looked at you like you were human, not a headline. You weren't saving the world. You weren't building an empire. You were just there, and it was enough." She folded the letter and slipped it into her journal. Then she smiled. Meanwhile, back in town, Jack tucked Lily into bed and lingered at her doorway. "Dad?" she whispered, already half asleep. "Yeah, Bug. Do you think Claire will come back tomorrow?" He smiled into the darkness. "I think she might." "Good," Lily murmured. "You smile more when she's here." Jack stood in the quiet. For a moment after she drifted off, the glow of her nightlight casting gentle shadows on the walls. He didn't know what this was. What was building between him and Claire? But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid to find out. For the first time in weeks, Claire didn't wake to the sound of an alarm or a ringing phone. No morning call sheets, no urgent texts from her publicist, just the gentle hush of pine trees brushing the windows and the echo of laughter from the night before still lingering in her chest. She padded barefoot into the kitchen of her rental cabin, tucked into a quiet bend of forest just outside town. The place was simple. Stone fireplace, old tile countertops, cast iron pans hung with mismatched nails. But after years of luxury suites and glass and steel condos, simplicity had never looked so inviting. She made herself coffee, black and strong, then opened her laptop, only to flinch at the flood of emails waiting in her inbox. Urgent. Statement needed for media. Request from Good Morning America. Are you okay? The press is circling. Your silence is becoming a story, Claire. She exhaled, closed the laptop and slid it to the edge of the table without answering a single one. Let them wait. Out here, in Pine Hill, she'd found something more important than airtime or appearances. She'd found people who didn't care that she'd once cooked for presidents or had a line of cookware at Macy's. They cared that she was kind to a little girl, that she laughed easily, that she brought good wine and washed dishes without being asked. Most of all, they cared that she showed up, not as Claire Laveau, celebrity chef, but just Claire. Later that morning, Claire pulled up to the small brick building where Jack ran his plumbing business. The sign out front read, Carter and Son Plumbing, though there hadn't been a and Son in years. Jack had never changed it. When she asked him about it once, he'd simply said, "Guess I liked the idea of passing something down." She stepped inside to the faint scent of motor oil, sawdust, and something distinctly lemony, probably whatever Jack used to clean his workbench. "Thought you might be out on a job," she said, spotting him at the counter, scribbling into a notepad. He looked up and smiled, not surprised to see her. "Called in some backup. I needed a day." "For what?" He shrugged, wiping his hands on a towel, "to see if you'd come by." Claire grinned and held up a brown paper bag. "Brought sandwiches. And those weird kettle chips Lily said you bribed my kid?" I negotiated with her. She drives a hard bargain. They ate outside, sitting on the tailgate of Jack's truck under a clear blue sky. The chips crunched loudly between them. Birds chirped lazily from a nearby tree. It felt like the world had paused for a breath. "You know," Jack said between bites, "you could stay." Claire raised a brow. "Stay? In town, I mean. Rest a while, people like you here. You're not a story, you're just Claire." She looked down at her sandwich, then back at him. "That's exactly why I shouldn't stay too long. The press, if they figure out I've been hiding here—" "Let them come," Jack said unfazed. "The worst they'll find is that you make a killer grilled cheese and my daughter likes you." Claire laughed. "You really don't care who I am, do you?" "I care who you are here," he said. "Not the version they post on magazine covers. That woman's fine, I guess. But I like this one better." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing, just reached out quietly and took his hand. But the peace didn't last. By the next morning, a sleek black SUV parked at the edge of Claire's rental cabin driveway. A man in a wool coat and Bluetooth headset climbed out, scanning the area like he expected paparazzi to pop out from the trees. Claire opened the door before he could knock. "Wes," she said, crossing her arms. Her manager looked relieved and exasperated. "Claire, thank God. Do you have any idea what kind of circus is waiting for you in New York?" "I told you I needed time. You disappeared," he said, after a fire in a small town. Do you know how fast the tabloids spin that into a nervous breakdown? Let them, she said, unmoved. I don't owe them anything, so. Lowered his voice. Okay, fine, but at least tell me what's happening here. There's a man, a kid, a plumbing business. Are you serious about this? Claire didn't answer. Wes sighed. You've worked your whole life for what you have. You can't just walk away. She looked him squarely in the eye. Maybe I don't want to walk away. Maybe I want to run. He blinked, clearly thrown. Claire, I'll come back when I'm ready, she said firmly, but not a moment sooner. That afternoon, Jack noticed something off when he picked Lily up from school. She was quiet in the truck, chewing her lip like she was trying to keep something in. What's up, Bug? He asked. She looked at him. Is Claire gonna leave? Jack's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Why would you think that? Because this morning I saw someone taking pictures outside her cabin, and people at school were talking about it. Some girl said her mom saw Claire on Access Hollywood. Jack exhaled slowly. He'd known it couldn't last forever. The quiet, the hiding, the normalcy. He didn't want to admit how much the thought of her leaving stirred something uncomfortable in his chest. Something like loss, or longing. When they got home, he called her. I heard the circus came to town, he said when she answered. Claire's voice was calm. It did. You okay? I will be. There was a pause. I can back off, he said. If that makes things easier. She was quiet for a moment. Jack, if there's one thing I've learned from you and Lily, it's that the easy path isn't always the right one. Another pause. Then her voice softened. Can I come over? She did come. Over, not with a plan, not with a camera crew or a PR strategy, just herself. And when Lily opened the door and wrapped her arms around Claire's waist like she belonged there, Jack knew something had shifted, not in a flashy fireworks kind of way, but in a quiet, certain way, the kind that says, this might just be something worth holding on to. By Saturday morning, Pine Hill wasn't so quiet anymore. Jack first noticed it at the gas station. 2 unfamiliar cars parked by the pumps, their glossy finishes reflecting the grey winter sky. A man in aviators lingered by the coffee machine. Too long, clearly not just choosing a roast. And outside the hardware store, a woman with a DSLR lens the size of a baguette pretended to photograph birds while keeping one eye on Jack's truck. He hated it. It wasn't just the invasion of privacy, it was the shift. The way familiar places started to feel watched, how neighbors avoided eye contact, unsure whether to ask for autographs or offer sympathy. The town was small, gossip moved faster than wildfire, and Claire, for all her grace, had become the center of a storm Jack never asked to be part of. That afternoon, he found Claire in the park behind the library, sitting on a bench in a wool coat, her breath fogging in the crisp air. Hey, she said, smiling, you found me? Jack sat beside her, hands in his coat pockets. Wasn't hard, just followed. The trail of camera clicks. She looked away, her smile faltering. I'm sorry, Jack, I didn't want this. I know. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind rustling through bare branches, the distant bark of a dog. Claire reached down and picked up a fallen leaf, twirling it between her fingers. This was supposed to be a quiet escape, she said. I came here to disappear, not to be rediscovered. Jack didn't respond right away. When he finally did, his voice was low. It's not just about you anymore. She looked at him. Wounded. I mean Lily, he clarified. She's 8. She doesn't understand why strangers are taking pictures of her at the grocery store. Claire's eyes softened. I didn't realize. I know you didn't. And I'm not blaming you, but this thing, this world you come from, it doesn't stop at your doorstep. He wasn't angry, not exactly, but there was tension in his voice, something unresolved, something deeper. Claire placed the leaf down gently on the bench. I can fix it. How? He asked. You can't unring a bell. She exhaled. I'll talk to my PR team. Tell them I'm taking a sabbatical. Tell them I'm not available. I'll make it go away. You shouldn't have to make your life disappear just because you care about us. Claire turned to him, brow furrowed. Jack, are you pushing me away? He didn't answer, because he didn't know. He'd lived in this town his whole life. He knew every pothole in the road, every name behind every counter. He'd built a world that was small, steady, safe, for Lily and for himself. Claire wasn't. Small or steady or safe. She was brilliance and chaos and movement. She belonged to the world. But last night, when she tucked Lily in and whispered a story about a French bakery and a little girl who saved a loaf of bread from a greedy raccoon, Jack had seen something else, a glimpse, a maybe. She could belong here too. I'm scared, he said quietly. Claire's face softened. So am I. He looked at her, really looked at her. Not the woman from magazines, but the woman who smelled like rosemary and flour, who burned her first. Grilled cheese in his kitchen because she was too busy laughing with his daughter to flip it on time. You don't owe me anything, he said. But I need to know you're here because you want to be, not because you're hiding. Claire didn't hesitate. I'm tired of hiding, and I'm tired of being the woman who only belongs in headlines. She reached for his hand. I want a life with meaning, with connection. I want to wake up and make breakfast for someone who doesn't care what I wore on TV last night. Jack's lips twitched. You do burn toast, she grinned. I'm working on that. The next day, Claire made good on her promise. She posted a video on her social media, a simple clip filmed from her phone, sitting in the cabin's kitchen. Hi everyone, it's Claire. First of all, I'm okay. Yes, the fire was terrifying. Yes, I'm grateful to be alive. And no, I don't have plans to return to TV anytime soon. I've found something here, peace, healing, real people. I hope you'll understand if I take a step back for a while. And if you see me in town, please, say hello, but maybe don't bring the cameras. The response was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive. Jack watched the video twice, then closed his phone and looked across the table at Claire, who was stirring cream into her coffee. You really meant that, he said. Claire nodded. All of it. You just gave up a lot, she shrugged. Maybe, or maybe I'm finally choosing right. That evening they drove out to the lake, just the three of them. Jack packed sandwiches and hot cocoa, and Claire brought homemade cookies that she and Lily had decorated with lopsided snowflakes and more sprinkles than anyone needed. They sat on the tailgate of the truck, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. Daddy, Lily said, her mouth full of cookie, if Claire stayed here forever, would that be okay? Jack glanced at Claire, who was pretending to examine her cocoa a little, too intently. I think, he said, that would be more than okay. Claire met his gaze, her eyes shining in the golden light. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't running. Not from expectation, not from pressure, not even from herself. She was standing still, and maybe, just maybe, she was home. Claire hadn't set foot in a test kitchen in over a month, not since before the fire, before the quiet town of Pine Hill had reminded her who she was outside the lens of a camera. But this morning was different. Jack unlocked the front door of the small, long-abandoned cafe that had once served as a breakfast stop for locals and loggers alike. The windows were dusty, the floor creaked in all the wrong places, and the scent of mildew lingered faintly in the corners. But Claire saw potential. Place has good bones, Jack said, brushing his hand across the counter like an old friend. I used to come here with my dad. The owner made cinnamon rolls the size of your head. Claire walked slowly through the room, touching the worn booths, the chipped tile, the empty pastry case. Her mind buzzed. Not with recipes or ratings, but with possibility. What made you bring me here, she asked, turning to him. Jack leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. because I see what this place could be, and I see who you are when you talk about food. Not fame, not press, just food. Claire looked around again, imagining a fresh coat of paint, the smell of bread baking in the oven, the sizzle of butter on a griddle. It's been a long time since I cooked without critics, Jack smiled. Well, around here the only critics are named Hank, and they think ketchup is a spice, she laughed. My kind of people. That afternoon, Jack and Claire returned with buckets, rags, and a toolbox. Lily joined too, proudly carrying a mini dustpan and declaring herself the chief mess inspector. They scrubbed years off the walls, cleared cobwebs, and unearthed a treasure trove of forgotten kitchen gadgets buried in the back pantry. Claire rolled up her sleeves and got her hands dirty, literally, grease, grime, and all. Jack caught her, humming as she cleaned, elbow deep in the old industrial sink. You miss it, don't you? He asked gently. She didn't look up. I miss this, the realness of it. I used to cook because it felt like magic, taking flour and eggs and heat and turning them into something that could make people feel loved. She paused, wiping sweat from her brow. Then it became about the brand, the empire. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to feed someone just because you cared. Jack leaned against the counter, watching her. Well, you've got one hungry crew here. No critics, no cameras, just a plumber and a kid with very high cinnamon roll expectations, she smiled. Then I guess I better start experimenting. The next few days became a whirlwind of dust, laughter, and food. Claire turned the back prep area into a test kitchen, reviving old family recipes, tweaking new ones, and letting Lily act as official taste tester, who took her role very seriously. Jack dropped by after work each day, offering handyman skills and occasional sous chef support. He replaced the broken light fixtures, fixed the ancient oven pilot light, and even built a makeshift spice rack out of scrap wood. One evening, as the sky turned soft with twilight, Claire handed Jack a plate with something golden and steaming. What is it? He asked, fork in hand. Try it. He took a bite, chewed, paused. Is this meatloaf? With a twist, Claire said, eyes twinkling. He narrowed his eyes. Did you sneak kale in here? A little bit. For texture. Jack took another bite and gave her a playful glare. You're lucky it tastes good. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I told you I was persistent. Later that night, they sat together outside the cafe, a portable heater glowing beside them and mugs of cider warming their hands. Claire looked up at the sky, 1,000 stars blinking in the cold air. I've been thinking, she said softly. Jack raised a brow. Dangerous, she nudged him with her elbow. I'm serious about this place, about us. What if we made this something permanent? You mean like a restaurant? Not quite. Not a big flashy thing, but something small, honest, a community. Kitchen, maybe breakfast and lunch only, local ingredients, a rotating menu, and a name that means something. Jack tilted his head. What name? Claire hesitated. Lily's table. He blinked, caught off guard. That's... wow. She's the reason I stayed, Claire said. The reason I started feeling again. This whole thing, it's not just about us. It's about what we're building for. Her. For people like her. People who need a place that feels like home. Jack was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I always thought I was doing okay, raising her on my own, keeping things simple. But these last few weeks, I've seen her come alive in a way I didn't know she needed. Claire looked at him. So, what do you think? He smiled. I think it's the best idea I've heard in a long time. The next morning, Claire drove to the town permit office and filled out the first application. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't televised. It didn't even involve a single truffle, but it was hers and Jack's and Lily's. a dream not built on prestige, but on pancakes and community, on second chances, on healing. That night, back at the cabin, Claire sat by the fireplace, her journal open in her lap. She stared at the page for a long time before writing 3 words in bold strokes. Start from love. Not from fear, not from pressure, not even from ambition. Love. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. It was a rainy Thursday when Claire found the note. She'd stopped by Jack's house early that morning, planning to surprise him and Lily with freshly baked scones, cranberry orange, still warm from the oven. The front door was unlocked, as it often was in Pine Hill, and she stepped inside to the familiar scent of brewing coffee and the soft hum of the old radio Jack always left on in the mornings. The kitchen table was a scatter of crayons, school books, and a half-eaten banana. Claire smiled. Life here was beautifully unpolished, uncurated. She liked it that way. She set down the scones, poured herself a cup of coffee, and noticed a folded piece of pink paper sitting on the counter. Her name was written in big, loopy letters across the front. To Claire, the I dotted with a tiny heart. Claire hesitated, then unfolded the paper. Inside, in careful, wobbly handwriting that wavered between capital and lowercase letters, was a short message that stopped her heart. Dear Claire, I like when you come over, you make Daddy laugh. He didn't used to laugh like that before you. I think he missed laughing. I think he missed being happy. He works hard. But when you're here, he stops and breathes. I hope you stay, love. Lily. Claire sat down at the table, the note trembling slightly in her hands. She'd received Michelin stars, Emmy Awards, glowing reviews from the world's top critics, but none of them had ever made her feel like this. This was something different. This was real. She looked around the room, at the chipped mugs, the framed picture of Emily holding baby Lily by the hospital window, the jacket draped over the chair. This wasn't just a house, it was a life. And somehow, without planning to, she'd stepped into it, and now a little girl was asking her to stay. When Jack walked in an hour later, damp from the rain and smelling faintly of cedar, he paused at the sight of her sitting at the table. "You okay?" he asked, hanging up his jacket. She held up the note. "Lily wrote me a letter," he smiled. "Oh no. What did she ask for? A pony? Another kitten?" Claire shook her head, her voice soft. "She asked me to stay." Jack froze, his humor fading. Claire stood, crossing the room to him. "She said you laugh more when I'm here." He looked down, brushing a raindrop from his sleeve. "I guess I do." Claire hesitated. "Jack, I need you to know something. I didn't plan any of this. Not the fire, not you, not Lily. But I found something here I didn't know I was missing." He met her eyes. "And what's that?" "Family," she said, barely above a whisper. "Belonging." Jack exhaled slowly, as if releasing something he'd been holding. "In far too long. I've tried so hard to protect Lily from losing more than she already has," he said. "After Emily died, I built this bubble, just me and her, safe, predictable. But maybe I built the walls too high." Claire reached for his hand. "You didn't do anything wrong. You did what any good father would. But maybe it's okay to let someone in now. Just a little." Jack didn't answer. Not with words. He stepped forward and kissed her. It wasn't rushed or hungry. It was quiet, gentle. A question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, Claire rested her forehead against his. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. That weekend, the 3 of them spent Saturday preparing for a soft test of Lily's table. Jack fixed a stubborn leak under the prep sink. Claire prepped breakfast sandwiches, and Lily, in her official title as Junior Hospitality Manager, folded napkins with artistic flair. They invited just a few neighbors. Mrs. Talbot, who'd taught Lily to knit. The Hansons from the farm down the road. Hank, who still argued ketchup should be its own food group. Everyone showed up, bundled in coats, dripping from the snow outside, and carrying the kind of warmth that fills a room more than any oven ever could. Claire stood behind the counter, watching as Jack served coffee with a joke. Lily passed out menus written in crayon, and plates were cleaned with the kind of joy that only comes from meals made with love. "This is it," Claire murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "This is what?" Jack asked, appearing beside her. She looked at him. "What I've been chasing all these years. Connection, community, purpose. Not applause, not ratings. Just this." He leaned on the counter, grinning. "Who knew it'd be found in a leaky old cafe in a town with one stoplight?" Claire bumped his shoulder. "I think you knew." After the last guest had left and the chairs were turned up on the tables, Claire took Lily's note from her bag and pinned it to the bulletin board by the register. Jack noticed. "That's some pretty special stationery," Claire smiled. "It's the mission statement." He looked at her. She nodded. "Laughter, breathing, belonging. If we give people that, we've already won." He stepped forward, resting his hand on her back. "You really mean it?" She turned to him. "I meant it the day I read it, and every day since." Outside, snow began to fall again, dusting the sidewalks and rooftops with a quiet, hopeful white. Inside, the cafe was still and warm, smelling of cinnamon, coffee, and fresh starts. Claire stood in the center of it all, heart full, future clear, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing the next big thing. She was already living it. The first official day of Lily's table opened not with a bang, but with the gentle sound of a bell over the front door and the hiss of eggs frying on a seasoned skillet. It was everything Claire had ever wanted a restaurant to be, and nothing like any place she had ever run before. No PR firm, no stylists, no television crews buzzing about with clipboards and lighting rigs, just locals and travelers who wandered in from the snowy street, their cheeks pink and their gloves damp, looking for something warm, comforting, and real. Claire stood behind the counter in a simple apron, her hair loosely tied back, watching Jack carry plates like he'd done it his whole life. He wore a crisp white shirt under his work vest, rolled up at the sleeves. Somehow, he looked more comfortable in this humble kitchen than any maitre d' she'd ever hired in her career. "Table 5, he called, sliding a plate of biscuits and gravy beside her. "Tell them it's my grandma's recipe, but with fewer curse words." Claire laughed, grabbing the plate and walking it out herself. She liked that, being part of the rhythm, connected to every smile, every satisfied nod. She wasn't above the work here. She was part of it. She belonged. By mid-afternoon, the last lunch customers had trickled out, and the cafe grew quiet again. Snow tapped gently on the windows, and Lily sat at the front table, building a castle out of sugar packets and stir sticks. Claire and Jack leaned on the counter, sipping coffee, letting the silence settle between them like a warm blanket. "You good?" he asked. Claire nodded. "More than good. I didn't know I could feel this full without being exhausted." Jack looked at her. "You've been running for a long time." "I have," she admitted, "chasing something I thought I needed to prove. And all along, what I was really looking for was a reason to stop running." He studied her for a moment. "What now?" Claire looked around the cafe, at the photos Lily had drawn and taped along the walls, at the chalkboard menu with her loopy handwriting, at the espresso machine Jack had repaired by hand, at the seat near the window where Mrs. Talbot now came every Thursday to knit and sip chamomile tea. "I stay," Claire said, her voice calm. "Certain. If you'll let me." Jack smiled softly. "That's not a decision I make alone." They both turned as Lily looked up from her sugar packet fortress. "I vote yes," she said solemnly. Claire laughed, her eyes misting. "Well, that settles it." Later that night, after closing, Jack invited Claire and Lily over for dinner. Not a fancy occasion, just chili simmering on the stove and cornbread baked in a cast-iron skillet older than both of them combined. But it felt special. Claire helped Lily set the table, letting the little girl place each mismatched plate and napkin with great ceremony. When the food was served and the laughter flowed as freely as the cider, Claire felt something shift inside her. A click, like a puzzle piece finding its place. After dessert, homemade butterscotch pudding that Claire insisted didn't count as real baking, even though Lily called it magic. Jack slipped into the kitchen to wash dishes. Claire followed. "You don't have to do all of that. Alone," she said, grabbing a towel. He looked at her, suds clinging to his forearms. "I'm used to it." "Well," she said, "get unused to it." Jack chuckled. "Yes, ma'am." They washed in silence for a moment, hands brushing occasionally, the air thick with something unspoken. Then Claire set down her towel. "Jack," she said softly, "there's something I've been meaning to ask." He turned, attentive. She hesitated. "What if I put down roots here? Not just the cafe. Me, what would that look like, for us?" Jack dried his hands, stepping closer. It'd look like Sunday mornings with pancakes and flour on the ceiling, like movie nights with Lily falling asleep halfway through, like you burning toast and pretending you meant to. Claire smiled. "And for you?" He reached for her hand. "It'd look like the best kind of life, the kind I didn't think I'd get a second chance at." She breathed in deeply, steadied herself, and then quietly, sweetly, she asked the question that had been pressing against her heart for days. "Would it be crazy if I said I love you?" Jack didn't blink, didn't flinch. He just stepped forward, took her face in his hands, and kissed her like the world had always been leading to this moment. When they parted, he whispered, "Not crazy at all." Claire rested her forehead against his. "So that's a yes." "The softest kind of yes," Jack said, his voice warm and full. "The kind you say with your whole heart." That night, after Lily had gone to bed and the dishes were done, Jack and Claire sat on the front porch, wrapped in a quilt, watching the snow fall quietly onto the sleepy street. Claire leaned into him. "You know, I used to think love had to be grand, explosive, made for headlines." Jack kissed her temple. "Nah, love's the quiet stuff, the daily stuff, the showing up." She smiled. "I think I'm finally ready for that kind of love." He nodded. "Me too." They sat in silence, two people who had weathered their own kinds of fire, now warmed by something slow and steady, something real. And when Claire looked up at the night sky, she realized the stars didn't shine any brighter than usual. But for the first time, she didn't need them to. 1 year later, the sign above the door of the little brick cafe gleamed with fresh paint and a touch of whimsy. "Lily's table, where food feels like home." It was a brisk spring morning in Pine Hill, and the scent of cinnamon and warm biscuits drifted onto the sidewalk, mingling with birdsong and laughter from a growing line of customers. Locals and out-of-towners alike gathered outside, clutching to-go cups and peering through the windows with curiosity and anticipation. Inside, the cafe hummed with life. The once faded walls now wore soft colors and framed hand-drawn art by neighborhood children, including a crayon sketch of Claire, Jack, and Lily holding a giant fork. The chalkboard menu changed weekly, featuring seasonal dishes and local produce, but a few staples remained: Jack's famous buttermilk pancakes, Claire's rosemary scones, and Lily's happy eggs with ketchup hearts. At the counter, Claire took orders with a warm smile and a linen apron tied loosely around her waist. Her once perfectly styled hair now curled freely around her cheeks, and the only makeup she wore was the rosy glow of contentment. Jack emerged from the kitchen, carrying 2 plates stacked high with French toast. "Table 3, he called. Grinning, a woman from Portland, clearly a fan, whispered to her husband, "That's him. That's the guy from the article, the one who saved her from the fire." Claire overheard, but she didn't flinch anymore. Fame had melted into something softer now, something manageable. She had no need to run from it, because here she wasn't defined by it. She was Claire, the baker, the friend, the woman who brought people together. "Still stealing my spotlight?" Claire teased, brushing past Jack. "You say that like—" "You don't love it," he shot back, sliding an arm around her waist. Lily bounded out from the back, now proudly wearing her tiny uniform apron with the words "Junior Manager" embroidered in pink thread. "Claire, we're out of banana muffins," she exclaimed. Claire gasped. "Already?" Lily nodded. "That guy in the flannel bought 3. I told him he should leave some for other people, but he just winked." Claire laughed. "Well, that's the price of greatness, sweetheart. We'll make more this afternoon." Lily leaned in close. "Can I help zest the lemons again? I didn't drop the grater once last time." "You got yourself a deal," Claire said, brushing flour off Lily's cheek. Jack looked at the two of them, Claire and Lily laughing in a sun-drenched kitchen, surrounded by the scent of fresh bread and joy, and felt something he hadn't known he was missing for years: wholeness. That afternoon, after the rush, the three of them sat on the small back porch behind the cafe, sipping lemonade and watching the breeze move through the trees. It had become their tradition, an unspoken, a pause in the day to just be. Claire rested her head on Jack's shoulder. "Did I tell you the editor from Taste and Travel emailed again?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "Another feature request? She wants to do a cover story. Big spread. The whole story, rescue, romance, and the recipe for your plumber's pancakes." Claire smirked. "Are you going to say yes?" Claire looked up at the sky, the clouds drifting slowly across the soft blue. "I think," she said thoughtfully, "I'll tell her thank you, but I already have the best story right here." Jack kissed her forehead. "You sure you're okay with being small-town famous instead of nationwide?" She smiled. "Jack, this town knows me better than any producer ever did. And besides, being loved by the right people is a lot better than being known by the wrong ones." Lily, lounging on a picnic blanket nearby, piped up. "I think we're just famous enough. Hank says we're a landmark now. That counts." Claire laughed. "Well, if Hank says it, then it must be true." As the evening settled in, they locked up the cafe and walked home together down Maple Street, Lily skipping ahead and humming a song she'd made up on the spot. Claire slipped her hand into Jack's. "Do you ever miss the quiet?" "Before all of this," he shook his head, "I thought I liked quiet. I thought that's what healing was, but turns out healing sounds like a kid singing about muffins and someone I love burning toast at 7 in the morning." Claire nudged him. "I only did that twice." "3 times, he corrected. She grinned. "Still worth it." They reached their house, the same little place where Jack had raised Lily through grief and grit, now filled with light and warmth and second chances. A pot of lavender bloomed near the porch. A heart-shaped wreath Lily had made out of pine cones hung crookedly on the door. Jack paused before stepping inside. "You know," he said quietly, "when I ran into that burning building, I didn't think I was saving a celebrity. I didn't think at all. I just knew someone needed help." Claire looked at him, eyes shining. "Turns out we were both saving each other." Months later, Lily's table would be featured in a small-town roundup of America's most heartwarming cafes. Customers would leave handwritten notes of gratitude in a mason jar near the register, sharing stories of meals that reminded them of childhood or helped mend a broken day. One woman said Claire's chicken pot pie brought her mother back to her in a memory so vivid she cried at the table. A widower wrote that Jack's cornbread made him smile for the first time since his wife passed. But the most precious note remained pinned to the corkboard behind the counter, protected by a simple plastic sleeve. "Dear Claire, you make Daddy laugh again. He didn't used to. I hope you stay, love, Lily." Every time Claire looked at it, she remembered the truth at the heart of everything. Love had brought her here. Love had healed her here. And love, quiet, ordinary, extraordinary love, had given her a life more fulfilling than any spotlight ever could. That night, after dinner and bedtime stories, after dishes and laughter, Jack and Claire stood in their kitchen, arms wrapped around each other as soft jazz played on the old radio. "Tomorrow," Claire whispered, "we'll try that new lemon tart recipe. And maybe make extra muffins for Hank." Jack kissed her cheek. "Tomorrow sounds perfect." And in the quiet hum of the evening, with the glow of the porch light behind them and the promise of another day filled with love, food, and family, they knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. If you've made it this far, thank you. We'd love to know. Where in the world are you watching from? And what part of this story touched you the most? Drop us a comment below. We read everyone. Your stories, your reflections, they mean the world to us. If you enjoy stories like this, full of heart, healing, and a little bit of magic, consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. We've got many more tales coming your way, from our little storytelling corner to wherever you are. Thank you for spending time with us today. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep believing in kindness.